The rain came down in sheets that November afternoon, turning the Seattle streets into rivers of reflected neon and headlights. I stood under the awning of the corner bodega, my daughter Emma pressed against my side, her small hand clutching the fabric of my worn jacket. She was shivering despite the pink raincoat I'd bought her from the thrift store last month, the one that was already too small for her growing 5-year-old frame. "Mama, I'm cold," she whispered, her breath fogging in the damp air. "I know, baby. Just a few more minutes, okay? The bus will be here soon." I pulled her closer, trying to shield her from the wind that whipped rain under our inadequate shelter. My phone showed 4:30 in the afternoon, but the sky was already darkening, heavy clouds blocking what little daylight remained. I had $17 in my wallet. $17 to last until Friday, 3 days away, when my paycheck from the diner would finally clear. We needed milk. We needed bread. Emma needed new shoes because the ones she wore had a hole in the sole that I'd tried to patch with duct tape, but the rain kept finding its way through. The bus was late. Of course it was late. I shifted my weight from foot to foot, my own shoes soaked through, my toes numb. I'd been on my feet for 9 hours, slinging coffee and eggs and pancakes to construction workers and truckers at Rosie's Diner on the edge of the industrial district. My lower back ached, my feet throbbed, but I couldn't afford to think about that now. "Mama, look!" Emma pointed across the street where a black car had pulled up to the curb outside an upscale Italian restaurant called Marcello's. Not just any car, a sleek Mercedes with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. A man in a suit stepped out, opening an umbrella, then opened the rear door. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The man who emerged from that car changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of confidence that came from never having to apologize for taking up space. Even from across the street, even through the rain, I could see the sharp lines of his face, the way his dark coat fell perfectly across his frame. He said something to the man with the umbrella, who nodded and hurried ahead to open the restaurant door. And then, impossibly, he looked directly at me. For just a moment, our eyes met across the rain-soaked street. His gaze was dark, intense, penetrating even from that distance. Something flickered in my chest, a recognition I couldn't name, a pull I didn't understand. Then Emma tugged on my hand, and I looked down at her upturned face. "Is he a prince, Mama? Like in my stories?" I almost laughed. Almost. "No, baby, just a man going to dinner." But when I looked back, he was still watching me. The man with the umbrella was waiting, holding the restaurant door open, but the stranger hadn't moved. He stood there in the rain, his coat darkening with moisture, staring at me and Emma with an expression I couldn't read. Then the bus arrived with a hiss of air brakes and a spray of dirty water, and I pulled Emma up the steps, fumbling for our passes, finding seats near the back. By the time I looked out the rain-streaked window, the man was gone, disappeared into the warmth and light of Marcello's. I told myself I'd imagined the intensity of that look, told myself it meant nothing. Men like that, wealthy, powerful, moving through the world with that kind of certainty they didn't notice women like me. Single mothers in thrift store coats, counting change, riding the bus because they couldn't afford a car. But that night, lying in our small apartment after Emma had fallen asleep in the twin bed we shared, I couldn't shake the memory of his eyes, dark and knowing, as if he'd seen straight through me, past the exhaustion and the worry and the careful mask I wore every day, down to something deeper. I turned over, pulling the thin blanket higher, listening to Emma's soft breathing beside me. Tomorrow I'd wake at 5, make her breakfast, walk her to kindergarten, then catch 2 buses to make it to my shift by 7. The same routine I'd followed for months, ever since we'd landed in Seattle with nothing but 2 suitcases and a desperate need to disappear. The man from the restaurant was probably already forgotten, a momentary curiosity on a rainy afternoon. Our worlds had briefly intersected on a street corner, and now they'd diverge again, never to cross. I was wrong about that. So completely, catastrophically wrong. The next day started like every other. The alarm screamed at 5 a.m., dragging me from dreams I couldn't remember. Emma stirred beside me, her small body warm, her hair a tangle of dark curls against the pillow. She had my hair, my eyes hazel with flecks of green. But her face, the shape of it, the determined set of her jaw, even in sleep, that came from someone else, someone I'd spent 5 years trying to forget. I showered quickly in our cramped bathroom where the tile was cracked and the water pressure was terrible, but the rent was $400 a month, which was all I could afford. I dressed in my diner uniform, black pants, white shirt, my name embroidered over the pocket in faded red thread. Maya, not my real name. My real name was left behind in another city, another life, buried under choices I couldn't undo and secrets I couldn't tell. Emma, baby, time to wake up. I gently shook her shoulder, watching as her eyes fluttered open, confused for a moment before focusing on my face. Is it morning already? It is. Come on, I made you oatmeal. We went through our morning routine with practiced efficiency. I braided her hair while she ate, packed her small backpack with the snack I'd prepared the night before, crackers and a cheese stick, an apple I'd gotten on sale. I helped her into her too small raincoat and her shoes with the hole in the sole, making a mental note that new shoes had to be the priority, even if it meant we ate rice and beans for a week. The walk to Little Sprouts kindergarten took 15 minutes. Emma's hand in mine, her chatter filling the early morning quiet, asking questions about everything. Why was the sky still dark? Where did pigeons sleep at night? Could we get a cat? Just a small one. She'd take care of it, she promised. We'll see, baby, I said. The answer I always gave when the real answer was we can't afford it. We couldn't afford anything beyond survival. At the kindergarten entrance, I knelt down to her level, straightening her collar, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. You be good today, okay? Listen to Miss Jennifer. I'm always good, Mama. Her serious expression made my heart squeeze. I know you are. I'll be here to pick you up at 3. Promise? Promise. I kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her baby shampoo and oatmeal, and something uniquely Emma. I love you to the moon and back, and to the stars and back. She threw her arms around my neck, squeezing tight, then released me and skipped through the door where her teacher waited. I watched until she disappeared into the classroom, then turned and hurried toward the bus stop. I had 40 minutes to make it across the city to the diner. If the buses were on time, I'd make it with 5 minutes to spare. They weren't on time. The first bus was 12 minutes late, which meant I missed my connection, which meant I had to wait another 20 minutes in the cold drizzle that seemed to be Seattle's permanent weather. By the time I rushed through the door of Rosie's diner, I was 15 minutes late and soaked through. Maya, there you are. Rosie herself was behind the counter, her steel-gray hair pulled back in its usual bun, her eyes sharp but not unkind. You're on Section 3. We've got a crowd today. Sorry, Rosie. The bus. I know, honey. Go on, get your apron. Tips should be good today at least. I tied my apron, grabbed my order pad, and dove into the organized chaos of the breakfast rush. Section 3 was 6 booths along the window, and all of them were full. I moved on autopilot, taking orders, delivering food, refilling coffee, smiling even though my feet already hurt, and my mind was calculating whether I could afford Emma's new shoes and still have enough for groceries. Miss. I turned to find a man in a business suit waving his credit card impatiently. Check, please. I've been waiting 10 minutes. He hadn't. It had been maybe 3. But I smiled anyway, took his card, ran it through the ancient machine at the register, and returned with his receipt. He left a $1 tip on a $32 bill. By noon, my section had turned over 3 times. My pockets were heavy with small bills and coins, and I'd started to, I hope that maybe, if the afternoon was as busy as the morning, I'd make enough to get Emma those shoes and still have a little cushion. That's when the door opened, and my world tilted on its axis. He walked in with the same confidence he'd carried across the street the day before. The same dark coat, though today it wasn't raining. 2 men flanked him, both in suits, both scanning the diner with the kind of awareness that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Security, or bodyguards, or something else entirely. Rosie appeared from the back, wiping her hands on her apron, her expression shifting from friendly to something warier as she took in the 3 men. Gentlemen, take any seat you like. The stranger's eyes swept the diner, and I saw the moment they landed on me. Recognition flared in those dark depths, followed by something I couldn't name. He said something to the men with him, too quiet for me to hear, then walked directly toward Section 3. Toward me. My heart hammered against my ribs. I busied myself wiping down a table that didn't need wiping, trying to steady my hands, trying to understand why this man's presence affected me so viscerally. He chose a booth by the window, the same window where I'd stood yesterday, watching him emerge from that car. He sat with his back to the wall. I noticed that detail. Filed it away with all the other small observations that were adding up to a picture I didn't want to see. The two men sat at the counter, far enough to give him privacy, close enough to intervene if needed. I had no choice but to approach. He was in my section. This was my job. I pulled out my order pad, forced my professional smile into place, and walked to his booth. "Good afternoon. Can I start you with some coffee?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied me with the same intensity he'd shown yesterday across the rain-soaked street. Up close, he was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, dark hair styled with casual perfection. But it was his eyes that held me brown, so dark they were almost black, intelligent and assessing and seeing far too much. Coffee. Black. His voice was deep, with a roughness to it that suggested he didn't waste words on pleasantries. Then, "You work here." Not a question. A statement of fact, as if he was filing away the information, categorizing it, determining what to do with it. "Yes." I kept my voice steady, professional. "Have you decided what you'd like to eat, or do you need a few minutes?" "Sit down." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Sit down." He gestured to the opposite side of the booth. "Please." My mind raced. Customers didn't ask their servers to sit with them. This wasn't normal. Nothing about this situation was normal, but something in his tone, in the way he watched me, made me glance around the diner, assessing my options. Rosie was at the register. The two men at the counter had turned slightly, their attention on us but their postures still relaxed. "I'm working," I said carefully. "I can't." 5 minutes." He leaned back, and I realized he wasn't going to force me. He was asking. In his own commanding way, but asking nonetheless. "I just want to talk." Every instinct I'd honed over the past 5 years screamed at me to walk away. To tell Rosie I felt sick and needed to leave. To grab Emma from school and disappear the way I'd disappeared before, trading one city for another, one identity for another. But I also needed this job. Needed the money it provided, however meager. And something about the way he looked at me, not threatening, not predatory, but curious and strangely intent, made me slide into the booth across from him. 5 minutes. I agreed, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. "Then I need to get back to work." He nodded once, then seemed to take a moment to choose his words. When he spoke, his voice was quieter, meant only for me. "Yesterday, the bus stop across from Marcello's. You were there with a little girl." My blood ran cold. He'd noticed Emma. He'd remembered Emma. "My daughter," I said, keeping my voice level. "We were waiting for the bus." "How old is she?" The question felt like a trap, though I couldn't say why. 5. "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, "What's your name?" "Your real name." The way he phrased it, "your real name," sent ice down my spine. He knew. Somehow, impossibly, this stranger knew that Maya wasn't who I really was. "Maya," I said firmly. "Maya Reeves. And I really need to get back to work, so if you're not going to order..." "Lena." The name hit me like a physical blow. I stopped breathing, stopped thinking. The diner around me seemed to recede, the clatter of dishes and murmur of conversations fading to white noise. Because nobody in Seattle knew that name. Nobody in this city, in this life, knew me as anything but Maya. Nobody except the man I'd left behind 5 years ago. The man whose child I'd carried in secret. The man I'd fled from in the middle of the night, because staying meant Emma would grow up in a world of violence and danger, and I couldn't let that happen. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw it. The shape of his jaw, so like Emma's. The intensity in his eyes that Emma sometimes showed when she was determined to understand something. The way he held himself, controlled and powerful and dangerous. No, it couldn't be. He didn't live in Seattle. He'd never left Chicago. That's what I'd counted on when I'd chosen this city, 3,000 miles away, far enough that our paths would never cross. "You're mistaken," I whispered, but the words came out weak, unconvincing even to my own ears. "Am I?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping even lower. "Lena Morrison, originally from Portland. Moved to Chicago 6 years ago to attend nursing school. Worked at Sacred Heart Hospital on the night shift. Disappeared 5 years ago without a word, without a trace, while 3 months pregnant with my child. The world spun. I gripped the edge of the table, fighting to stay upright, to keep my expression neutral even as panic clawed at my chest. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't. The single word was sharp, commanding. Don't lie to me. Not about this. How did you find me? The question escaped before I could stop it, and I saw the answer in his eyes. I've been looking for 5 years, Lena. 5 years of wondering if you were alive or dead, if you'd lost the baby, if you'd— He stopped himself, jaw clenching. I've had people searching every city, every hospital, every records database. And then yesterday, I came to Seattle for business, and I saw you across the street. You and a little girl who has your hair and my eyes. Oh God, this wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Dominic, I breathed his name without meaning to, and saw satisfaction flash across his face. You do remember me. Good. He settled back, against the booth, his posture deceptively relaxed, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the coiled readiness of a predator. Now, you're going to tell me about my daughter. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. No, I'm not. Because you're right, I left. I left for a reason. And that reason hasn't changed. His expression darkened. You took my child. I saved her. My voice rose before I could stop it, and several heads turned in our direction. I lowered it to an urgent whisper. I saved her from growing up in your world, Dominic. From watching her father. I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't voice the things I'd seen, the darkness I'd discovered lurking beneath the man I'd thought I loved. He'd told me he was in business. Import-export, he'd said. It wasn't until I was pregnant, until I'd accidentally walked into a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear, that I'd learned the truth. Dominic Castellano didn't just run businesses. He ran Chicago's South Side. He was the head of an organization that controlled everything from the docks to the councilmen to the police, who looked the other way. He was, in every definition of the word, a mafia boss. And I'd been so young, so naive, so in love that I hadn't seen it until it was almost too late. From watching her father what? Dominic's voice was dangerously quiet. Provide for her, protect her, give her everything she could ever need. From watching her father become a monster. The words burst out of me raw and honest. From growing up thinking violence is normal, that money solves everything. That, I stopped, realizing I was saying too much, revealing too much of the fear that had driven me away. I won't let you make her into what you are. Something flickered across his face. Hurt maybe, or anger, or both. For a moment, he looked almost human, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him before. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask of control. You don't have a choice, he said quietly. She's my daughter, Lena. Mine. And I'm not letting either of you disappear again. I stood on shaking legs. You can't stop me, can't I? He stood as well, and even though the booth separated us, I felt the full weight of his presence, his power. I own this city now, Lena. Seattle is mine. Every judge, every cop, every official who matters, they're all on my payroll or in my debt. You run, and I'll find you before you make it to the city limits. You try to take her somewhere I can't follow, and I'll have you arrested for kidnapping, because legally, you did kidnap my child. You left while pregnant without telling me, without giving me any say in my own child's life. The words hit like hammer blows. He was right. Legally, morally, I'd taken his child and hidden her from him. It didn't matter that I'd done it to protect her. It didn't matter that I'd been terrified and young and desperate. In the eyes of any court, I was the one who'd wronged him. What do you want? My voice came out barely above a whisper. I want to meet my daughter. The command was absolute, allowing no room for negotiation. Tomorrow. You'll bring her to me, or I'll come to wherever you're living and meet her there. Your choice. I thought of our small apartment, with its cracked tiles and secondhand furniture. Thought of Emma's toys stored in repurposed boxes, her clothes bought from thrift stores, the careful way I rationed every dollar. And I thought of Dominic's world, the world I'd glimpsed during our brief time together. The penthouse apartment, the cars, the restaurant he'd emerged from yesterday, probably one of dozens he owned. Not the apartment, I said finally, defeated. Somewhere public. He considered this, then nodded. Cal Anderson Park, 1 o'clock. There's a playground there. Of course he'd already know about the playground. He'd probably had people following me, watching Emma, cataloging every detail of our lives while I'd remained oblivious. And, after? I asked, needing to know what I was agreeing to. After you meet her, then what? His smile was cold, holding no warmth. Then we discuss custody arrangements. The word custody hit me like a physical blow, but before I could respond, before I could argue or plead or make him understand why that could never happen, Rosie appeared at the table. Everything okay here, Maya? Her eyes darted between us, picking up on the tension even if she couldn't understand its source. Fine, Rosie. I forced a smile that felt like broken glass. Just finishing up. Dominic pulled out his wallet, extracted several bills without counting them, and laid them on the table. Far more than a cup of coffee cost. Keep the change, he said to Rosie, then his eyes found mine again. Tomorrow, Lena. 1 o'clock. Don't make me come looking for you. He walked out, his security detail falling into step behind him, and I stood there trembling. The money he'd left scattered on the table like a taunt, like a reminder that he had everything: power, resources, control, and I had nothing but a fierce, desperate love for a daughter who was about to learn that the father she'd never known was a monster in an expensive suit. I couldn't eat that night, couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Emma, listening to her breathe, memorizing the sound of it, the rhythm of it, as if tomorrow might be the last time I'd hear it undisturbed by the chaos Dominic Castellano was about to bring into our lives. How did you tell a 5-year-old that the father she'd never known, the father I'd told her had gone away, was suddenly here and wanted to meet her? How did you explain that to a child who'd asked about him only once, when she was 4, after seeing other kids picked up by their dads at kindergarten? Where's my daddy, Mama? He had to go away, baby. But he loved you very much. A lie. Or maybe not. Maybe Dominic would have loved her, if I'd given him the chance. But love from a man like him came with strings attached, strings made of violence and blood, and a world I'd sworn to protect Emma from. At midnight, I finally gave up on sleep. I slipped out of bed carefully, tucking the blanket around Emma's small form, and moved to the kitchen. Our apartment was small, just 1 bedroom, a bathroom, and a combined living room and kitchen, but it was ours. Safe. Or at least it had been until yesterday. I made tea with shaking hands, sat at our tiny table, and stared at the wall where Emma's drawings were taped. Stick figures of the 2 of us holding hands, a rainbow, a flower. Simple, innocent expressions of a childhood I'd fought so hard to give her. My phone sat on the table, the unknown number that had texted me that afternoon glowing in my memory. Tomorrow. 1. Don't be late. DC. He'd gotten my number. Of course he had. Dominic didn't make threats he couldn't back up, didn't issue commands he couldn't enforce. If he said he owned Seattle, I believed him. If he said he'd find us if we ran, I believed that too. I'd researched him once, in those early weeks after leaving Chicago. Sitting in a library in Sacramento, one of many cities I'd passed through before settling in Seattle, I'd used a public computer to search his name. The results had been terrifying in their scope. Dominic Castellano, 35 years old, head of the Castellano family, one of the 5 major organized crime families controlling Chicago. Suspected involvement in everything from illegal gambling to extortion to murder, but never charged, never even arrested, untouchable. The articles had used words like ruthless and calculating and dangerous. They'd also shown photographs of him at charity galas, cutting ribbons at hospital openings, shaking hands with politicians, the legitimate businessman facade that hid the monster beneath. Except he'd never been a monster with me. That was the part I couldn't reconcile, couldn't make sense of even now. The Dominic I'd known for those 6 months in Chicago had been intense, yes, controlling, absolutely, but never cruel, never violent, at least not where I could see it. He'd taken me to dinners at restaurants where the staff knew him by name. He'd sent flowers to my apartment, the small studio I'd rented near the hospital, every Friday without fail. He'd listened when I talked about my shifts, about the patients who broke my heart, about my dreams of finishing my nursing degree and maybe, someday, opening a clinic for underserved communities. He'd made me feel safe, protected, cherished. And then I'd overheard that conversation. 2 men in Dominic's office, their voices carrying through the door I'd opened looking for a bathroom. Words like disposal and message, and make sure his family understands what happens to people who steal from us. When I'd asked Dominic about it later, trying to sound casual, trying not to let him see the fear crawling up my spine. He'd looked at me with those dark, unreadable eyes and said, simply, "Some things are better left unknown, Lena. Trust me." But I couldn't. Not after that. Not when I'd realized I was pregnant 2 weeks later, that I was carrying the child of a man who spoke casually about sending messages through violence. So I'd planned. Carefully. Methodically. I'd withdrawn cash in small amounts over several weeks. I'd bought a bus ticket under a fake name. And one night when Dominic was out of town on business, I'd left everything behind my apartment, my job, my identity, and disappeared. I'd become someone new. First Sarah in Sacramento, then Jessica in Portland, then Maya in Seattle. Always moving, always looking over my shoulder, always ready to run. Until now. Until Dominic had found us, and running was no longer an option. The tea had gone cold in my hands. I dumped it in the sink, washed the cup, and checked the time. 2 a.m. In 11 hours, I'd be taking Emma to meet her father. In 11 hours, everything would change. I crawled back into bed, curling around Emma's warm body, breathing in the scent of her hair, and finally, just before dawn, I fell into a fitful sleep haunted by dark eyes and darker promises. "Mama, why are you sad?" Emma's question came over breakfast oatmeal again, because it was cheap and filling, and I realized I'd been staring at my bowl without eating, lost in thoughts of the park, of Dominic, of all the ways this could go wrong. "I'm not sad, baby." I forced a smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how to tell you your father is a criminal. About how to protect you from a man who has the power to take you away from me. About how I've been living in fear for 5 years, and now that fear has a face and a name and he's waiting for us at a playground. About something special," I said instead, setting down my spoon. "Emma, I need to talk to you about something important." She looked up at me with those serious hazel eyes. So like mine, but with flecks of something darker. His eyes, inherited and undeniable. "Okay, Mama. Where did I even start?" I took a breath, chose my words carefully. "Remember how you asked me once about your daddy?" Her eyes widened. She set down her spoon with careful precision, giving me her full attention. "The one who went away?" "Yes." "Well, God, this was harder than I'd imagined. He didn't exactly go away. I took you away. We left when you were just a baby because things were complicated. But now he's here, in Seattle. And he wants to meet you." Emma processed this information with the seriousness only a 5-year-old could manage. "Today?" "Yes, today. At the park. Would that be okay with you?" "What's his name?" "Dominic." "Why did we leave?" The question I'd been dreading. I couldn't tell her the truth that I'd been afraid, that I still was. That her father was dangerous in ways she couldn't understand. "It's complicated, baby. Grown-up stuff. But the important thing is that he wants to meet you very much." "Is he nice? Was Dominic nice?" "He could be. He had been to me. Once. But nice was such an inadequate word for what he was. He's your father," I said finally. "And I think he'll be happy to meet you." Emma considered this, then asked the question that broke my heart. "Will he like me?" I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight against my chest. "He's going to love you, Emma. How could he not? You're the most amazing little girl in the whole world." She hugged me back, her small arms strong around my neck. Then she pulled away, her expression suddenly worried. "But you'll be there too, right? You won't leave me with him?" "I'll be right there the whole time," I promised, even though I didn't know if that was a promise I could keep. "I won't let you out of my sight." She seemed satisfied with this. She finished her oatmeal, chattering about what she wanted to wear to meet her father, whether he liked rainbows because she loved rainbows, whether he knew how to push someone on a swing. I listened and smiled, and tried not to think about how Dominic's world was about to collide with ours, how the innocence in Emma's questions would be tested against the reality of who and what her father was. At noon, I dressed Emma in her best outfit, a purple dress I'd found at Goodwill that was only slightly faded, with pink leggings that almost matched. I brushed her dark curls until they shone, tied them back with a ribbon. She looked beautiful, perfect, like the most precious thing in the world, which she was. I dressed carefully too, though I had few enough options. Jeans without holes, a sweater that was clean and relatively new, my hair pulled back in a ponytail. I looked like what I was, a struggling single mother, worn down by years of minimum wage jobs and constant fear. We took the bus to Cal Anderson Park, Emma's hand in mine, her questions continuing nonstop. What did Dominic look like? Was he tall? Did he have a car? Did he live in Seattle? You'll see soon, I told her, my stomach churning as the park came into view. It was a Saturday, and despite the gray Seattle weather, the playground was busy with families. Kids shrieked on the swings, climbed on the jungle gym, raced across the open grass. Normal families doing normal things, oblivious to the life-altering meeting about to take place. I saw Dominic before he saw us. He stood near a bench at the edge of the playground, wearing dark jeans and a leather jacket instead of the suit I'd seen him in yesterday. Almost casual, except nothing about Dominic was truly casual. His security was there too, the two men from the diner, standing at strategic points around the park, their watchfulness obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Is that him? Emma whispered, following my gaze. Yes, baby, that's him. She squeezed my hand tighter, suddenly nervous now that the moment was here. He's tall. He is. I led her forward, each step feeling like walking toward an execution. My own, maybe. Or the execution of the life I'd built, the safety I'd created. Dominic turned as we approached, and I watched his face as he saw Emma really saw her for the first time. Something cracked in his expression, that controlled mask slipping to reveal raw emotion beneath. Wonder, disbelief, and something that looked almost like pain. He dropped to one knee as we reached him, bringing himself to Emma's height, and I saw his hands tremble slightly before he clasped them together. Professional, controlled Dominic Castellano, shaking at the sight of his daughter. Hello, Emma, he said, and his voice was rough, thick with feeling. I'm Dominic. I'm your father. Emma pressed against my leg, suddenly shy, peeking at him from behind my hip. Hi, she whispered. You're beautiful, Dominic said, his eyes moving over her face, cataloging every feature. You look like your mother, but I have your eyes, Emma said, with the factual observation of a child. Mama said so. His gaze lifted to mine, questioning, and I nodded slightly. I'd told her that much at least, that she had her father's eyes. Can I? He stopped himself, seemed to gather his composure. Would you like to go on the swings? I'd like to push you, if that's okay. Emma looked up at me for permission, and I nodded, even though every instinct screamed to grab her and run. Okay, she said softly, then added with careful politeness. Thank you. Dominic's expression softened impossibly further. He stood and held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Emma took it. I followed them to the swing set, my heart in my throat, watching as Dominic lifted Emma onto a swing with surprising gentleness. He moved behind her, gave her a careful push, then another. Higher, Emma called, already losing some of her shyness, and I saw Dominic smile, a real smile, unguarded and genuine in a way I'd rarely seen. Hold on tight, he warned, pushing her higher, and Emma's laughter rang out across the playground. I stood to the side, arms wrapped around myself, watching this impossible scene. A mafia boss pushing his daughter on a swing. A little girl who didn't know her father was dangerous, who only saw a tall man with kind hands and careful attention. After the swings, Emma dragged Dominic to the jungle gym, showing off how she could climb to the top, how she could hang from the monkey bars for almost 10 seconds. He followed her, spotted her climbs, praised her efforts, and I saw something in him I'd never seen before. Softness, vulnerability, love, fierce and immediate and absolute. They'd been playing for maybe 30 minutes when Emma suddenly stopped at the top of the slide, her face serious as she looked down at Dominic waiting at the bottom. Are you going to stay? She asked, her child's voice carrying across the playground. Or are you going to go away again? I saw Dominic's jaw clench, saw him look at me over Emma's head, his expression complex and unreadable. I'm going to stay, he said firmly. I'm not going anywhere, Emma. I promise. Do you promise? Like really, truly? Emma, really, truly. He held up his hand. You can even pinky promise if you want. Emma slid down to him, held out her tiny pinky, and Dominic hooked it with his own, sealing the promise with the same seriousness he probably brought to million-dollar deals. Then Emma asked the question that changed everything. Are you going to be my daddy now? Like, live with us and everything? I saw Dominic's eyes find mine, saw the intent in them, the determination. Would you like that? He asked Emma, but his gaze never left my face. Yeah. Emma's enthusiasm was unguarded, unfiltered. I never had a daddy before. Jessica at school has a daddy and he takes her for ice cream and reads her stories. And… She stopped suddenly, looking between us. Is that okay, Mama? Can he be my daddy? Every eye in the vicinity seemed to turn toward me. Dominic's security, watching from their positions. A few other parents who'd noticed the intensity of the conversation. And Dominic himself, waiting for my answer, his expression making it clear that this wasn't really a question at all. We should talk about this, I said carefully, my voice tight. This is a big decision, Emma. We need time to… I've had 5 years to think about it. Dominic cut in, his tone gentle but implacable. I'm not waiting any longer. He looked at Emma. Would you like to get some ice cream? I saw a shop just down the street. Yes, Emma bounced excitedly. Can we, Mama? Please? I wanted to refuse. Wanted to take Emma's hand and walk away from this park, this man, this impossible situation. But Dominic's words from yesterday echoed in my mind. I own this city. You run, and I'll find you. Ice cream sounds. Nice, I heard myself say, and watched satisfaction flicker across Dominic's face. The walk to the ice cream shop was surreal. Emma skipped between us, holding both our hands, chattering about her favorite flavors. Dominic's security followed at a discreet distance, and I felt the weight of their presence, the reminder of what Dominic was beneath the attentive father facade. At the shop, Dominic bought Emma whatever she wanted, 2 scoops of cookie dough with gummy bears, chocolate sauce, and whipped cream. He got nothing for himself, just watched her eat with an expression of such fierce tenderness it made my chest ache. She's perfect, he said quietly, meant only for me as Emma focused on her massive sundae. You did well with her, Lena. I can see that. The compliment felt like a trap. Her name is Emma Rose, I said, just to say something. I named her after my grandmother, Emma Rose Castellano. He said it like he was testing how it sounded. It fits her. Reeves, I corrected sharply. Emma Rose Reeves. That's her legal name. His expression hardened slightly. For now. The threat was implicit. He intended to change that. To claim Emma as his, legally and permanently. We need to talk, I said, keeping my voice low. Not here. Not in front of her. Agreed. He checked his watch. Expensive, probably worth more than 6 months of my rent. I have a suite at the Four Seasons. We can talk there while Emma watches TV or… No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Somewhere public, somewhere neutral. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Fine. Tomorrow night. There's a restaurant called the Butcher's Table. 8 o'clock. I'll arrange childcare for Emma. I'm not leaving her with strangers. Then bring her. There's a private room. She can eat and watch movies while we discuss our arrangement. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Because there will be an arrangement, Lena. One way or another, I'm going to be part of her life. The only question is whether you make this easy or difficult. Before I could respond, Emma turned to us, her face covered in chocolate. This is the best day ever, she announced. I got to meet my daddy and he's really nice and he pushes me high on the swings and now I have ice cream. Dominic pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, who carried handkerchiefs anymore, and gently wiped her face. I'm glad you're having fun, Emma. Would you like to do this again? See me again? Every day, she said enthusiastically, then looked at me. Can he come over, Mama? To our apartment? I can show him my room and my drawings and… We'll see, baby, I interrupted, panic rising at the thought of Dominic seeing where we lived, the poverty we existed in. Let's take things slow. But Emma was already telling Dominic about her drawings, about her favorite stuffed animal, about how she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up because she loved animals so much. And Dominic listened to every word, attentive and engaged, asking questions, encouraging her stories. This was the danger I hadn't anticipated. Not that Dominic would be cruel or threatening with Emma, but that he would be exactly this kind, interested, everything a little girl could want in a father. How did I protect her from someone who genuinely loved her? When the ice cream was finished and we left the shop, Emma asked if Dominic had a car. Could she see it? Could she maybe sit in it? I have several cars, Dominic said, amusement in his voice. But my favorite one is parked just over there. Come on, I'll show you. The car was a black Range Rover with windows so tinted I couldn't see inside. Dominic opened the back door, and Emma climbed in with wide eyes, running her hands over the leather seats, pressing buttons on the console that controlled who knew what. It's like a spaceship, she breathed, and Dominic laughed a real laugh, warm and unguarded. Would you like a ride home? He asked, looking at me. It's starting to rain. It was. Fat drops were beginning to fall, and I thought of the 2-bus journey back to our apartment, of Emma's too-thin raincoat and my own inadequate jacket. That's not necessary, I started. But Emma's pleading expression stopped me. Please, Mama? I never been in a car this nice before. The truth of that statement, the casual revelation of our poverty, made Dominic's expression darken. Get in, he said, and it wasn't quite a command, but close enough. I climbed in beside Emma, hyper-aware of the luxury surrounding us, the scent of leather and expensive cologne. Dominic got in the front passenger seat, spoke an address to the driver I hadn't realized. Was there a large man with a scarred face who nodded silently and pulled into traffic? How do you know where we live? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I know everything about you, Lena. He turned to look at me over the seat. Every address you've lived at for the past 5 years. Every job you've held. Every friend you've made. His expression softened slightly. I know you work 60-hour weeks at a diner that pays minimum wage. I know you've been saving for 6 months to buy Emma new shoes. I know your apartment is in a neighborhood with a crime rate that keeps me up at night. The invasion of privacy should have made me angry. Instead, I just felt exhausted. Exposed. Stop, I said quietly. Please. He held my gaze for another moment, then turned back around. The drive passed in silence, broken only by Emma's questions about the car's features, which Dominic answered with patience that would have seemed impossible from the man I'd known 6 years ago. When we pulled up in front of my building, a rundown complex with peeling paint and bars on the ground floor windows, I saw Dominic's hands clench into fists against his thighs. You've been living here, he said, and it wasn't a question. His voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. With my daughter, in this neighborhood. It's all I could afford, I said defensively, already reaching for the door handle. Thank you for the ride. Emma, say goodbye. Wait. Dominic turned fully in his seat. The restaurant tomorrow night. 8 o'clock. Be there, Lena. Or I'll come here. His eyes swept over the building again, disgust evident. And trust me, you don't want that. It was both invitation and threat. I nodded, helped Emma out of the car, and hurried toward the building's entrance as the rain intensified. But I felt Dominic's eyes on us the entire way, felt the weight of his judgment and his fury that we'd been living like this while he had everything. That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep talking excitedly about her daddy, about the swings and the ice cream and the fancy car, I sat at our small table and cried. Not because I was sad. Not exactly. But because the walls I'd built so carefully over 5 years were crumbling. Because Emma was already attached to Dominic in the way children attach to parents who paid attention, who showed interest, who made them feel special. And because I knew, with sick certainty, that Dominic Castellano wasn't going to let us go. We were his now. Emma was his. And whether I liked it or not, my daughter was about to enter a world I'd spent 5 years protecting her from. A world of wealth and power and danger. A world ruled by a man who looked at his daughter with fierce love and at me with something darker, something possessive and claiming. A world I had no idea how to navigate or survive. The butcher's table turned out to be exactly what I'd expected: upscale, exclusive, the kind of place where a meal cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I'd stressed for an hour about what to wear, finally settling on the only dress I owned that wasn't from a thrift store, a simple black one I'd bought years ago for nursing school interviews. Emma wore her purple dress again. It was her favorite, and she'd insisted on wearing it to see her daddy. Her daddy. In less than 24 hours, she'd fully accepted Dominic as her father, incorporating him into her understanding of the world with the ease only children possessed. A car had arrived at our apartment at 7:30, not Dominic's Range Rover, but a different black sedan with a driver who'd introduced himself as Marcus and treated Emma with careful respect. He'd opened doors for us, helped Emma into her car seat, made small talk about the weather that was clearly meant to put us at ease. Now we stood at the entrance to the restaurant, Emma's hand in mine, both of us intimidated by the elegance surrounding us. "Miss Reeves?" A hostess appeared, her smile professional. "Mr. Castellano is expecting you. Right this way, please." She led us through the main dining room, all dark wood and candlelight, and well-dressed patrons speaking in hushed tones to a private room in the back. Dominic was already there, rising from his seat as we entered. He wore a suit tonight, charcoal gray with a crisp white shirt, and he looked every inch the powerful businessman he pretended to be. But his expression softened immediately when he saw Emma. "There's my girl," he said, and Emma released my hand to run to him. He caught her, lifting her up, and I saw the same wonder on his face that had been there at the playground, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "Hi, Daddy," Emma said, using the name naturally, as if she'd been saying it her whole life. I saw Dominic's eyes close briefly at the word, saw his arms tighten around her. "Hi, baby girl. Did you have a good day?" Emma launched into a detailed description of her day at kindergarten, while Dominic carried her to the table, setting her in a chair with a booster seat that someone had obviously prepared in advance. There was a kids' menu waiting, along with crayons and a coloring book. "I thought she might get bored while we talk," Dominic explained, noting my surprise. "There's a TV." He gestured to a flat screen mounted on the wall. "If she wants to watch something after dinner." He'd thought of everything, planned for every detail. It should have made me feel cared for. Instead, it made me feel manipulated, controlled. Dinner was ordered: chicken fingers and fries for Emma, something elaborate for Dominic and me that I barely tasted. Emma chatted happily between bites, telling Dominic about her best friend Sophie, about how she could count to 100, about the book her teacher was reading to the class. Dominic listened to everything, asked questions, engaged with her completely. And I watched this man who commanded a criminal empire transform into a father so attentive and gentle it made my chest ache with complicated emotion. After Emma had eaten and been set up with a Disney movie and her coloring book, Dominic finally turned his full attention to me. "We need to discuss arrangements," he said without preamble. "I'm not giving you custody," I said immediately. "Emma stays with me." "Agreed." I blinked, surprised. "What? I'm not trying to take her from you, Lena." His voice was calm, reasonable. "I can see you're a good mother. Emma is happy, healthy, well-adjusted. I'm not going to disrupt that." Relief flooded through me, so intense it made me dizzy. "Then what do you want?" "I want to be part of her life. I want regular visitation. I want her to know me as her father." He leaned forward. "And I want you both to move out of that apartment into somewhere safe." There it was, the catch. "I can't afford. I'll provide the apartment. Fully furnished, in a good neighborhood, close to a better school than the one Emma currently attends." "No." The word came out flat, final. "I'm not taking your money, Dominic. I'm not becoming your—" I stopped, not wanting to say what I was thinking in front of Emma, even though she was absorbed in her movie. "My what?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "Say it." "Your kept woman." I met his eyes. "Your mistress who lives in an apartment you pay for and does what you want because she has no other choice." Something flashed across his face. Anger, maybe, or hurt. "Is that what you think I'm offering?" "Isn't it?" He was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. Finally, he said, "I'm offering safety, Lena. I'm offering Emma a home where she doesn't have to sleep in a bed with her mother because there's only one bedroom, where she doesn't have to wear shoes with holes in them or clothes from thrift stores, where she doesn't have to hear gunshots through thin walls or worry about her mother working herself to death." Each word hit like a blow because they were all true. Our apartment was barely adequate. Our neighborhood was dangerous. I was constantly exhausted, constantly worried, constantly one emergency away from complete disaster. "What do you want in return?" I asked quietly. "Access to my daughter, time with her, the chance to be her father." He paused. "And I want you to stop running, to accept that I'm not going away, that we need to find a way to coexist for Emma's sake. That's all?" His eyes held mine. For now. The implication was clear: this was just the beginning. The first step in whatever plan Dominic had for binding us to him permanently. "I need time to think," I said. "You have 24 hours. He pulled a card from his pocket, slid it across the table. "That's the address of the apartment. It's ready now. Move in tomorrow, or I'll have your current lease terminated and your belongings moved for you." "You can't do that." "I can do anything, Lena." He wasn't boasting, just stating a fact. I told you, I own this city. That includes your landlord, who owes me several favors. He stood, buttoning his jacket. Tomorrow night, I'll come by to say goodnight to Emma. 7 o'clock. Be at the new apartment or the old one. Your choice. He walked to where Emma was coloring, crouched beside her chair. I have to. Go now, sweetheart. Business to take care of. But I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Okay, Daddy. Emma threw her arms around his neck, and I saw his eyes close, his expression transforming into something vulnerable and raw. I love you. The words were automatic, the way children said them, but I saw them hit Dominic like a physical impact. His arms tightened around her. I love you too, Emma. So much. When he stood and looked at me, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Tomorrow, Lena. 7 o'clock. Then he was gone, and I was left sitting in a private room in an expensive restaurant with a daughter who just told her father, her criminal father, that she loved him, and a business card in my hand with an address that represented the end of everything I'd built. The independence I'd fought for. The life I'd created away from Dominic's world. The illusion of safety I'd maintained for 5 years. All of it was crumbling, and I had no idea how to stop it, or if I even wanted to. Anymore. I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I sat on our worn couch after Emma had fallen asleep, staring at the business card Dominic had given me. The address was in Queen Anne, one of Seattle's most desirable neighborhoods. I'd looked it up on my phone, tree-lined streets, beautiful homes, excellent schools, the kind of place I'd never imagined living, the kind of place Dominic could give us with a snap of his fingers. By dawn, I'd made my decision. Not because I wanted to accept Dominic's help, but because Emma deserved better than what I could provide on my own. She deserved a safe neighborhood, a good school, a bedroom of her own. She deserved the chance to know her father, even if that father terrified me. I called Rosie at 6 a.m., before the diner opened, and gave my 2 weeks' notice. Her protests were immediate and heartfelt. I was one of her best waitresses, reliable and hardworking. But when I explained that Emma's father had come back into our lives and wanted to help support us, her tone shifted to something approving. About time that man stepped up, she said. You've been struggling too long, Maya. Let him help. That's what fathers are supposed to do. If only she knew what kind of father Emma had. By 9 a.m., I'd packed what few belongings we owned, our clothes, Emma's toys, the drawings taped to our kitchen wall. Everything fit into 3 suitcases and 2 boxes. 5 years of our lives reduced to something that could fit in a single car trunk. The cab I'd called arrived at 10. I'd looked up the address one more time, memorized the route, then helped Emma into the back seat surrounded by our possessions. Are we moving, Mama? She asked, confused but not upset. Children were adaptable that way. Yes, baby, to a new apartment, a nicer one. Did Daddy find it for us? The casual way she said Daddy still sent a jolt through me. Yes, he did. He's really nice, Mama. I'm glad he came back. I pulled her close, kissed the top of news, her head, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong, about the danger we were stepping into, about the world I'd sworn to protect her from that was now swallowing us whole. The building at the Queen Anne address was exactly what I'd expected. Modern, secure, with a doorman who greeted us by name. Miss Reeves, of course. Mr. Castellano had already informed them of our arrival. The apartment was on the 4th floor, corner unit, and when the doorman unlocked it and stepped aside, I understood exactly how much power Dominic wielded. The apartment wasn't just furnished, it was a home. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with appliances that gleamed, a living room with furniture that looked expensive and comfortable. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, letting in light that made everything glow. Whoa, Emma breathed, her eyes huge. This is ours? Yes, baby, this is ours. She took off running, exploring every room, her delighted shrieks echoing through the space. I followed more slowly, taking in the details. The kitchen stocked with food, real food, not just ramen and canned soup. The bathroom with fluffy towels and expensive toiletries. The master bedroom with a king-sized bed and an ensuite bathroom that had a tub big enough to swim in. And Emma's room. Oh God, Emma's room. It was perfect. Painted a soft purple, her favorite color, with a white bed covered in stuffed animals. A bookshelf filled with children's books. A desk with art supplies. a toy box overflowing with things she'd only ever seen in store windows. "Mama, look!" She was bouncing on the bed, her face radiant with joy. "Look at all the toys, and the books, and—" She spotted something on the nightstand, a framed photograph. Her expression shifted to wonder as she picked it up. "Mama, is this you?" I crossed to her, looked at the photo she held, and felt my heart stop. It was me. Younger, probably 22, laughing at something off camera. I was wearing a blue dress I'd forgotten I owned, my hair loose around my shoulders, and I was happy in a way I hadn't been in years. And beside me, his arm around my waist, was Dominic. We were at some restaurant, the background blurred but elegant, and we were looking at each other like nothing else in the world mattered. I remembered that night, one of our first dates. He'd taken me to a place on the waterfront, and we'd talked for hours about everything and nothing. I'd felt safe with him, cherished, like I'd finally found someone who saw me. Before I'd learned what he really was. "That's me and your daddy," I said quietly, "a long time ago." "You look happy." I was. The admission slipped out before I could stop it. "Are you happy now?" Was I? I looked around the beautiful room Dominic had created for our daughter, thought about the security of this building, the relief of not worrying about making rent or whether we'd have enough to eat. Thought about Emma's joy, her immediate attachment to a father who clearly adored her. "I'm getting there, baby," I said finally. We spent the day unpacking our meager belongings into the vast closets, exploring the neighborhood, finding the park just 2 blocks away and the elementary school Emma would attend in the fall. Everything was clean, safe, perfect. Everything I'd wanted to give her but never could. At 6:30, I ordered pizza for dinner from a real restaurant, not the dollar menu at the convenience store. And we ate at the dining table that sat 6. Emma chattering excitedly about her new room, the playground, the books she wanted to read. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Emma scrambled from her chair. "That's Daddy." She ran to the door before I could stop her, and I heard Dominic's voice, warm and delighted. "There's my girl. Did you have a good day?" I found them in the entryway, Emma in his arms, talking a mile a minute about the apartment, her room, the toys, everything. Dominic listened with complete attention, but his eyes found mine over her head, questioning. I nodded slightly. We were here. We'd accepted his help. For better or worse, we were in his world now. He carried Emma into the living room, sat with her on the couch, and listened to her describe every detail of her day. I stood in the doorway, watching this scene that should have been impossible. A mafia boss being a father, genuine and present and patient. When Emma finally ran out of words, Dominic said, "Why don't you show me your room? I want to see if you found everything okay." They disappeared down the hallway, Emma pulling him by the hand, and I heard her excited voice explaining where she'd put each toy, each book. When they emerged 15 minutes later, Emma was yawning, and Dominic carried her toward her room. "Bath time?" he asked me, and I nodded, still not quite believing this was happening. I ran Emma's bath in her new bathroom with a tub shaped like a flower and bath toys already arranged on the planned shelf, while Dominic stayed with her, reading one of her new books. The domesticity of it was surreal, wrong, and yet somehow, right in a way that terrified me. After her bath, I dressed Emma in new pajamas, soft, expensive, with princesses on them, and Dominic tucked her into bed. He sat on the edge of her mattress, stroking her damp curls, his expression so tender it made my chest ache. "Good night, sweetheart," he said softly. "I'll see you tomorrow, okay?" "Will you read me a story?" Emma asked, stifling another yawn. "Which one?" She pointed to a book on her nightstand, and Dominic picked it up, began reading in his deep voice. I leaned against the doorframe, watching them, watching my daughter fall asleep to her father's voice, something I'd never imagined she'd have. When she was fully asleep, Dominic set the book aside, kissed her forehead gently, and stood. He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression of such fierce love it stole my breath. Then he followed me out of the room, closing the door softly behind him. "We need to talk," he said quietly. I led him to the living room, as far from Emma's room as possible. The city lights glittered through the windows, and I stood with my arms wrapped around myself, suddenly nervous to be alone with him. "Thank you," I said, because I needed to say it. "For all of this." The apartment, Emma's room, everything. It's too much, but it's not enough, he interrupted. Not nearly enough. Emma deserves the world, Lena, and I intend to give it to her. What about me? The question came out before I could stop it. What do you intend to give me? He moved closer, his presence filling the space between us. What do you want? I want to know this isn't a trap, that you're not using Emma to… I struggled for the right words. To control me, to own me. His expression darkened. I'm not trying to own you, Lena. Then what are you trying to do? He was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. Finally, he said, I'm trying to fix what I broke 6 years ago. I'm trying to be the man you needed me to be back then. The man Emma deserves now. You can't change what you are, Dominic. No, he agreed quietly. I can't. I am what I am. I won't apologize for it or pretend otherwise. But that doesn't mean I can't be a good father, that I can't provide for my daughter, that I can't… He stopped, seeming to struggle with whatever he wanted to say next. Can't what? His eyes met mine, dark and intense. That I can't still care about her mother. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. Don't, I whispered. Don't say things like that. Why not? It's true. He took another step closer. Do you think I spent 5 years looking for you just because of Emma? I didn't even know about her until yesterday. I was looking for you, Lena, because I couldn't accept that you'd just disappeared. Because the thought of something happening to you, his hands clenched into fists. I needed to know you were safe. I left because I wasn't safe with you. The words burst out, raw and honest. I left because I found out what you really were, and I couldn't raise a child in that world. I still can't. Then we'll keep her separate from it. His voice was firm, commanding. Emma will never see that side of my life. Never be exposed to the violence or the danger. I swear it. You can't promise that. You're a… I stopped, lowered my voice to an urgent whisper. You're a criminal, Dominic. A mafia boss. That's not something you can separate from family life. One day someone will come after you, or after me, or after Emma, and no one will touch either of you. The words were flat, absolute. Anyone who even thinks about threatening my family will find out exactly what I'm capable of. The darkness in his expression, the cold certainty, reminded me of exactly why I'd run. This was the real Dominic. Not the gentle father reading bedtime stories, but the man who could speak casually about violence as a solution. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, I said quietly. That Emma will grow up thinking that's normal. That violence is how you solve problems. That fear is how you earn respect. I would never teach her that. You won't have to. She'll learn it just by being around you. I moved away from him, putting the couch between us like a barrier. I appreciate what you've done for us. This apartment, the security, all of it. But we can't. Can't what? Be a family? His voice was hard now, edged with frustration. Emma already thinks of me as her father, Lena. She already loves me. Are you going to take that away from her just because you're afraid? Yes. The word came out sharp, desperate. Yes, I'm afraid. I'm terrified. Because I know what happens to people in your world, Dominic. They get hurt. They disappear. They end up dead in alleys or at the bottom of rivers. And I will not let that happen to my daughter. Our daughter. He moved around the couch with predatory grace. She's our daughter, Lena, not just yours. And I'm not going to disappear from her life just because you're scared. Then what do you propose? I demanded, standing my ground even though everything in me wanted to retreat. That we just pretend everything is normal? That I ignore what you do, where your money comes from, the blood on your hands? Something flickered in his eyes, pain maybe, or guilt. I've never asked you to ignore it. I'm asking you to accept that I can be both things. A father who loves his daughter, and a man who does what's necessary to protect his family and his interests. Those two things are incompatible, are they? He was close now. Close enough that I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw. My father was in this life, Lena. My grandfather, too. And they were good fathers. They protected us, provided for us, kept us safe from everything they dealt with in their business. Until they couldn't, I shot back. Your father died when you were, what, 25? Killed by a rival family. Is that the legacy you want to leave Emma? His expression shuddered immediately, walls slamming down. That won't happen. You can't know that. Yes, I can. His voice was cold now, controlled. Because I'm more careful than my father was, more ruthless, more prepared. No one touches my family without facing consequences so severe they'll serve as a warning for generations. The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction, should have scared me. Instead, I felt something else, something I didn't want to name, a part of me, buried deep, that found his protectiveness compelling, that wanted to believe he could keep us safe. I need time, I said finally, exhausted by the argument, by the emotions warring within me. Time to process this, to figure out what's best for Emma. You have time. He reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. But I should know these are the custody papers my lawyers drew up. Joint custody, 50-50 split. I'll file them with the court next week unless we can come to an arrangement ourselves. My stomach dropped. You're threatening me with court? I'm giving you a choice. He set the envelope on the coffee table. We can work this out between us, or we can let judges decide. But either way, I'm going to be in Emma's life. I'm going to be her father. That's not negotiable. He turned toward the door, and I felt panic rise in my chest. Not because he was leaving, but because some part of me didn't want him to. Some part of me remembered what it felt like to have him in my life, to have someone strong and capable standing beside me. Dominic, wait. He paused, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. What did you mean? I asked quietly, when you said you still cared about me. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, I meant exactly what I said. 5 years ago, you were the best thing in my life, Lena. You made me want to be better. And when you left, when you disappeared without a trace, his voice roughened. It nearly destroyed me. So yes, I still care. Probably more than I should, considering you ran from me and kept my daughter a secret for 5 years. I did what I thought was right. I know. He finally turned to face me. And I'm trying not to hate you for it. Trying to understand that you were scared, that you were protecting our daughter. But it doesn't change the fact that I missed everything, Lena. Her first words, her first steps, her first day of school. 5 years of her life that I can never get back. Guilt crashed over me, heavy and suffocating. He was right. Whatever my reasons, however justified my fear, I'd stolen those years from him. From both of them. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, Dominic. I didn't know what else to do. His expression softened slightly. I know, but sorry doesn't give me back what I lost. So we move forward from here. We figure out how to coexist, how to give Emma the childhood she deserves. And maybe, he stopped himself, shook his head. Maybe we can figure out the rest later. He left without another word, and I stood alone in the beautiful apartment he'd provided, surrounded by security and luxury and everything I'd ever wanted to give Emma, everything I couldn't have given her on my own. I picked up the envelope he'd left, pulled out the legal documents inside. Custody agreement, child support calculations, visitation schedules, all laid out in precise legal language that would bind us together for at least the next 13 years, until Emma turned 18. And tucked at the bottom of the stack, a separate document that made my breath catch. A marriage proposal, not romantic, not emotional. A business arrangement, laid out in legal terms. If I married Dominic, Emma would automatically be recognized as his legitimate daughter. She'd have access to his name, his resources, his protection, and I would be provided for, cared for, protected, but also bound, trapped, owned in all the ways that mattered. I set the papers aside and walked to Emma's room, stood in the doorway watching her sleep, her small face peaceful in the soft glow of her nightlight. She deserved everything Dominic could give her, everything I wanted for her. But what did I deserve? What kind of life did I want for myself? I didn't have an answer. Not that night. Not yet. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was making breakfast, real eggs and bacon, not the instant oatmeal we'd survived on when the doorbell rang. Emma was still sleeping, and I approached the door cautiously, checking the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, late 50s, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She didn't look threatening, but I'd learned not to trust appearances. Yes? I called through the door. Miss Reeves? My name is Margaret Santos. I'm Mr. Castellanos, attorney. He asked me to stop by this morning to discuss some matters with you. Of course. Dominic had sent his lawyer. I should have expected that. I opened the door, gesturing her inside. I haven't made any decisions about the custody papers yet. I understand, and that's not why I'm here. She settled on the couch, pulled a folder from her briefcase. Mr. Castellano wanted you to be aware of certain protections he's put in place. Protections? She nodded, opened the folder. First, a trust fund for Emma. It's already been established and funded. She'll have access when she turns 25, but the trustees can release funds before then for education, medical expenses, or other necessities. My mind struggled to process this. How much? $5 million. The number was incomprehensible. More money than I'd earn in several lifetimes. Enough to ensure Emma never wanted for anything. Ever. Second, Margaret continued, a protection detail. Mr. Castellano has assigned 2 security professionals to monitor both of you. They'll be discreet, but they'll ensure your safety at all times. We're being followed? Alarm spiked through me. You're being protected, she corrected gently. There's a difference. Mr. Castellano has many enemies, and now that it's known he has a daughter, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. How is it known? I demanded. We just reconnected 3 days ago. Margaret's expression turned sympathetic. Information travels quickly in certain circles, Miss Reeves. And Mr. Castellano hasn't exactly been subtle about his interest in you and Emma. People notice, people talk, and some people see opportunity in that information. Fear settled cold in my stomach. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. That Emma would become a target simply by virtue of being Dominic's daughter. What kind of opportunity? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Leverage, ransom, revenge. Margaret set aside the papers. Mr. Castellano wants you to understand the seriousness of the situation. You and Emma are valuable to him, which makes you valuable to his enemies. The protection detail is non-negotiable. And if I refuse? If I take Emma and leave Seattle? Then you'll have security following you wherever you go. And Mr. Castellano will file for emergency custody on the grounds that you're endangering Emma by refusing protection. She met my eyes. He's not trying to trap you, Miss Reeves. He's trying to keep you and his daughter alive. The distinction felt meaningless. Trapped was trapped, whether the cage was built from fear or love. There's one more thing. Margaret pulled out a different document. This one simpler, less official-looking. A proposal from Mr. Castellano. Not legal, just personal. I took it, read the handwritten note in Dominic's bold script. Lena, I know you're scared. I know you don't trust me, and I understand why. But Emma deserves to have both her parents in her life, and she deserves for those parents to get along. I'm proposing a trial period. 3 months. You and Emma stay in the apartment I've provided. I visit regularly, spend time with Emma, prove to you that I can be the father she needs without exposing her to the darker parts of my life. At the end of 3 months, we revisit the custody arrangement. If you still want to leave, if you still think I'm too dangerous to have in Emma's life, I'll let you go. I'll provide financial support and protection, but I won't fight you in court. I won't force myself into your lives. But if I can prove to you that I'm not the monster you think I am, then we discuss something more permanent. A real family for Emma. A real chance for us. The choice is yours. It's always been yours. I read it twice, searching for the trap, the manipulation. But all I found was a man asking for a chance. A father who wanted to know his daughter. And maybe, just maybe, a man who still had feelings for the woman who'd run from. Him, he means it, Margaret said quietly. I've known Dominic Castellano for 10 years. I've seen him be ruthless, calculating, sometimes cruel. But I've never seen him like this, vulnerable, asking instead of demanding. He threatened to take Emma to court if I didn't cooperate, I pointed out. And yet he's giving you this option instead. She stood, gathered her papers. 3 months, Miss Reeves. That's all he's asking. 3 months to prove he can be the father Emma deserves. Is that really so unreasonable? She left before I could answer. And I sat alone with Dominic's letter, reading it again and again, trying to decode the man behind the words. Emma emerged from her room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Mama, is Daddy coming today? I looked at my daughter, at her hopeful expression, and made my decision. Yes, baby. Daddy's coming today. And he's going to keep coming. For a while at least. Good. She climbed into my lap, snuggling against my chest. I like having a daddy. I held her tight, breathed in her scent, and prayed I was making the right choice. 3 months. I could survive 3 months of Dominic in our lives. And maybe, just maybe, he'd prove me wrong. Prove that he could be both things, a man in a dangerous business and a good father. Or maybe he'd prove me right, and I'd have my answer about whether Emma and I could ever truly be safe in his world. Either way, the decision was made. We were staying. For now, the 3 months that followed were a revelation. Dominic came every day, sometimes for just an hour in the evening to tuck Emma in and read her a story, sometimes for the whole afternoon, taking us to parks and museums and the aquarium. He was patient, attentive, everything a father should be, and slowly, carefully, he began to prove that he could separate his two worlds. He never took calls about business when Emma was around, never spoke in code or received suspicious visitors. When he was with her, he was just dad pushing her on. Swings, helping her build blocks, listening to her endless questions about everything from why the sky was blue to where clouds went at night. I watched them together and saw genuine love, genuine connection. Emma flourished under his attention, growing more confident, more joyful, and Dominic transformed in her presence. The hard edges softened, the cold control gave way to warmth. But it wasn't just about Emma. Dominic made time for me too. Conversations over coffee after Emma went to bed. Dinners for the 3 of us that felt almost normal, almost like a real family. He asked about my dreams, my plans for the future, what I wanted beyond just surviving day to day. Go back to school, he said one night, 2 months into our arrangement. Finish your nursing degree. I'll cover the costs. Arrange childcare for Emma. You shouldn't have to give up your dreams just because you have a daughter. That's not how being a single mother works, I said. But there was no heat in it. You're not single anymore, Lena. You have me. The words should have felt like a trap. Instead, they felt like a promise. We never discussed the marriage proposal. It sat between us, unspoken but present, coloring every interaction. Sometimes I caught him looking at me the way he used to, 6 years ago, when the world was simpler and I didn't know what he really was. And sometimes, more often than I wanted to admit, I found myself looking back with something that felt dangerously close to longing. But there were reminders, too, that this wasn't normal. The security detail I'd finally accepted, the 2 men who followed us discreetly wherever we went. The phone calls Dominic would step away to take, his voice dropping to that cold, commanding tone that sent shivers down my spine. The news reports about crime in the city, territory disputes, the occasional body found in circumstances that screamed organized crime. And then, 7 weeks into our 3-month trial, everything changed. I was at the grocery store with Emma, our security detail hovering nearby, when I noticed a man watching us. Not unusual, Dominic was known now to have a daughter, and people were curious. But this man was different. His gaze was focused, intent, predatory. I moved Emma closer, kept my hand on her shoulder, tried to appear casual while my heart raced. The security noticed too. I saw them shift position, moving to intercept if necessary. The man approached, despite their presence, his smile friendly but his eyes cold. "Excuse me, are you Lena Morrison?" Using my old name. My real name. The one I'd buried 5 years ago. Ice ran down my spine. "I'm sorry, you have the wrong person. I don't think so." He moved closer, and I saw one of the security guards step forward. The man ignored him, kept his attention on me. "I have a message for Dominic Castellano. Tell him that Marco Rossi sends his regards." Marco Rossi. The name meant nothing to me, but I saw recognition flash across the security guard's face, followed by alarm. "Step back, sir," the guard commanded, his hand moving to his jacket where I knew he kept a weapon. The man smiled wider, and it was a terrifying expression. "No need for that. I'm just delivering a message." His eyes moved to Emma, and his smile turned cruel. Such a beautiful little girl. It would be a shame if anything happened to her. Everything happened at once. The security guard grabbed the man, shoving him against a shelf. The second guard moved to shield Emma and me, ushering us quickly toward the exit. Shoppers scattered, alarmed by the commotion. And Emma, my beautiful, innocent Emma, started crying, terrified by the sudden violence. "Mama, what's happening? Why is that man angry?" I scooped her up, carried her out of the store to where our car waited. The driver already had the door open, and we piled in, the security guard right behind us. "Drive," he commanded. "Now." We peeled out of the parking lot, and I held Emma tight, trying to calm her while my own heart raced. She was crying, confused, scared, exactly what I'd been trying to prevent. "Call Mr. Castellano," the security guard said into his phone. "We have a situation." The drive to Dominic's office took 15 minutes that felt like hours. Emma's crying had subsided to hiccuping sobs, and she clung to me like she used to when she was younger, when the world was scary and I was her only safety. "It's okay, baby," I murmured, stroking her hair. "Everything's okay. We're safe." But we weren't safe. That was the point. We never would be. Not as long as we were connected to Dominic. The car pulled up to a building I'd never been to, nondescript, industrial. Nothing that screamed Mafia headquarters, but somehow obviously exactly that. Security was everywhere. Armed men in suits who parted to let us through. Inside, we were rushed down a hallway to an office at the end. The door flew open before we reached it, and Dominic stood there, his expression, more terrified than I'd ever seen it. "Emma, Lena, are you hurt?" He crossed to us in 2 strides, his hands running over Emma, checking for injuries. "We're fine," I said, my voice shaking. "Just scared." Emma reached for him, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight I thought he might crush her. "It's okay, sweetheart. Daddy's here. No one's going to hurt you." There was a scary man, Daddy. He was mean to us. "I know, baby. I know." He kissed her head, his eyes meeting mine over her curls, and I saw fury there that made my blood run cold. "Lena, take Emma into the next room. There's a TV, some toys. I need to take care of something." I knew what take care of something meant. It meant violence. It meant revenge. It meant exactly the world I'd been trying to keep Emma from. "Come on, baby," I said, taking Emma from his arms. "Let's go watch a movie." The next room was clearly set up for situations like this. A comfortable space with child-friendly entertainment, soundproofed walls. I settled Emma with a Disney movie and sat beside her, trying to keep my expression calm even though terror clawed at my chest. Through the walls, I couldn't hear words, but I heard tone. Dominic's voice, sharp and commanding. Other voices responding. The sound of furniture moving, maybe someone being shoved against a wall. And then, silence. Emma had fallen asleep, exhausted by the fear, and crying. I moved her to the couch, covered her with a blanket someone had thoughtfully provided, and finally allowed myself to fall apart. I'd been right. I'd been right all along. Dominic's world was dangerous. His enemies would use us to get to him. And Emma, innocent, beautiful Emma, would pay the price for her father's choices. The door opened, and Dominic entered. His knuckles were bloody. His shirt was untucked, his tie loosened. He looked like he'd been in a fight, and from the cold satisfaction in his eyes, I could guess who'd won. "Is she asleep?" He asked quietly, his gaze moving to Emma. "Yes." He crossed to the couch, knelt beside her, stroked her hair with blood-stained fingers. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and I wasn't sure if he was talking to Emma or to me. "I'm so sorry. Who was he?" I asked. "Marco Rossi." Dominic's jaw clenched. "A rival. Someone who thinks he can move into my territory. Take what's mine. He wanted to send a message by threatening you and Emma. Did it work? Did he send his message?" "Yes." Dominic stood, his expression hardening. "And I sent one back. Rossi's people will find their boss in pieces by morning, along with a very clear message about what happens to anyone who threatens my family." The casual violence in his voice should have repulsed me. Instead, I felt something else, a dark satisfaction that the man who'd scared Emma would pay for it, and that realization terrified me more than anything else. I was starting to think like Dominic, starting to accept his version of justice. "This is what I was afraid of," I said quietly. "This is exactly why I left, Dominic. Because your enemies become our enemies. Because Emma will never be safe as long as she's yours. She'll never be safer than when she's mine," he countered, moving closer. "What happened today proved that. My security protected you. My resources found the threat. My power will eliminate anyone who dares come after my family. Your power created the threat in the first place." My voice rose despite my effort to keep quiet. "That man came after us because of you. Because you're who you are and do what you do. Don't you see? This will never end. There will always be someone trying to get to you through us. Then I'll kill them all." His voice was flat, absolute. "Every single person who even thinks about threatening you or Emma. I'll burn this city to the ground before I let anyone hurt either of you." The conviction in his voice, the absolute certainty, should have scared me. Instead, I felt tears slip down my cheeks because I believed him. Dominic would kill for us, would die for us, would do terrible things to keep us safe. And the worst part was that I was starting to believe that might be the only way we survived. "I can't do this," I whispered. "I can't live like this, always looking over my shoulder. Always wondering if today's the day someone comes after Emma to hurt you. Then marry me." The proposal hung in the air between us. Not romantic, not gentle, but fierce and commanding. "Marry me," he repeated, moving closer. "Make it official. Let the whole world know that Emma is mine, that you're mine, that anyone who touches either of you signs their own death warrant. Right now you're a vulnerability. Make it official, and you become untouchable. That's not how marriage works. Dominic, it is in my world." He cupped my face in his bloody hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. "I can protect you better as my wife than as my daughter's mother. I can surround you with security that no one would dare breach. I can make you so valuable, so important, that hurting you would start a war no one wants. So I'd be your property, your possession. You'd be my family." His thumb brushed away my tears, surprisingly gentle. "You and Emma both. Protected, provided for, cherished. I know you're scared. I know you don't trust me. But I'm asking you to trust that I can keep you safe. That I will keep you safe, no matter what it costs." I looked at him, this dangerous, violent man who'd just admitted to planning murder, and saw the truth in his eyes. He meant every word. He would protect us with everything he had. But was that enough? Was safety worth the price of my freedom, my independence, my soul? I didn't have an answer. Not then. Not with Emma sleeping on the couch and Dominic's bloody hands on my face and the terror of the day still crawling under my skin. "I need time," I said finally. "You don't have time." His voice was gentle but firm. "Rossi's move today means the territory disputes are escalating. Other families will see his attempt as permission to come after me. You and Emma are targets now, Lena. The only question is whether you let me protect you properly or whether you keep fighting me while the danger increases." He was right. I hated that he was right, but he was. The moment that man had approached us in the grocery store, everything had changed. We weren't just Dominic's secret anymore. We were known, visible, vulnerable. 3 months, I said, surprising myself. "You wanted 3 months to prove you could be Emma's father. You have 4 more weeks. At the end of that time, we'll talk about making this permanent." Something like relief washed over his face. 4 weeks. I can work with that. He released me, stepped back, and I saw him transform. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating boss. "I'm tripling your security detail. 2 guards on Emma at all times, 2 on you. The apartment gets upgraded. Security. I want surveillance on every entrance, every window, every possible point of access. Dominic. Non-negotiable." His tone brooked no argument. "And Emma doesn't go anywhere without both security and either you or me present. No more solo grocery trips, no more casual errands. Until I've dealt with the current threats, you stay in protected environments." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being paranoid, overbearing, but I remembered that man's smile, his cold eyes on Emma, and I couldn't, because Dominic was right. We needed protection, whether I liked it or not. "Okay," I agreed quietly. "Whatever you think is necessary." His expression softened slightly. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I know this is exactly what you ran from 6 years ago. But Lena," he moved closer again, his voice dropping, "I will not let anything happen to either of you. That's a promise I'll keep, even if it costs me everything." I believed him. God help me, I believed him. The final 4 weeks passed in a blur of security upgrades and tense vigilance. Dominic was right, the territorial disputes escalated. 3 more families made moves against his operations. 2 of his businesses were hit, 1 burned to the ground. And through it all, Dominic remained coldly efficient, ruthlessly eliminating threats while somehow maintaining his role as Emma's devoted father. She noticed the increased security but seemed to accept it as normal. Children were adaptable that way, especially when the adults around them projected calm. And Dominic was very good at projecting calm, even when I knew he was orchestrating violence behind the scenes. The marriage proposal sat between us, unspoken but present in every interaction. Sometimes I caught him watching me with an intensity that suggested he was waiting for an answer, and sometimes, more often than I wanted to admit, I found myself imagining what it would be like to be his wife, to have his name, to accept the protection and security he offered in exchange for what? My freedom? My independence? Or maybe just my fear? Because that's what it really came down to. Was I willing to trade my fear for safety? Was I willing to bind myself to a man who lived in darkness if it meant Emma could grow up protected? The answer came unexpectedly. Late one night, 3 weeks and 6 days into our trial period, I woke to find Dominic sitting in a chair beside Emma's bed, watching her sleep. He did that sometimes. I'd discovered came by after I'd gone to bed, let himself in with the key I'd given him, and sat vigil over his daughter. "You're here late," I said softly from the doorway. He didn't startle, just turned to look at me. Couldn't sleep. I wanted to make sure she was safe. She is safe. You've turned this apartment into a fortress. It's not enough. His voice was rough, tired. It will never be enough. There will always be someone stupid enough to try, Lena. Someone who thinks they can use her to get to me. I moved into the room, sat on the edge of Emma's bed. She slept peacefully, oblivious to the danger surrounding her, to the war being fought to keep her safe. You can't protect her from everything, Dominic. No parent can. I can try. He reached out, brushed a curl from Emma's forehead with infinite gentleness. I have to try. His voice broke slightly. She's everything, Lena. Everything good I've ever had. The only pure thing in my entire life. And suddenly, I saw it. Saw him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not the mafia boss. Not the dangerous criminal. But a father terrified of failing his daughter. A man trying desperately to be better than what he was, to give his child something he'd never had. Safety, stability, unconditional love. "Okay," I heard myself say. He looked up, confusion in his eyes. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I'll marry you." The words came out steady, certain in a way I hadn't expected. Not because I'm scared, not because you're forcing me, but because Emma deserves to have both her parents, and those parents should be a team, a family. Dominic stood slowly, as if afraid sudden movement would shatter the moment. "You mean it?" "I mean it." I stood as well, faced him in the dim glow of Emma's nightlight. "But I have conditions. Anything. Emma comes first. Always. If your business, your empire, your anything threatens her, you step back. You find another way. You keep her safe even if it costs you everything else. Done. No hesitation. And you teach her the truth. Not now, not when she's 5. But eventually, she needs to know what you are, what you do. She deserves the chance to decide for herself what relationship she wants with your world." He hesitated at that one, jaw working. Finally, he nodded. "When she's old enough to understand." "I promise. And me," I said, my voice dropping lower. "You don't own me, Dominic. Marriage doesn't make me your property or your possession. I'm choosing this, choosing you, but I choose freely. I need you to understand that." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes, but he nodded. "You choose freely. Always." He moved closer, his hand coming up to cup my face. "Does this mean you forgive me? For being what I am? For the danger I bring into your lives?" "No," I said honestly. "I'm still scared. Still angry about the world you've pulled us into." But I covered his hand with mine. "I'm choosing to trust that you'll keep us safe. That the man who sits beside his daughter's bed in the middle of the night will do whatever it takes to protect her." "I will," he promised, his voice fierce. "I swear on everything I am, Lena. I will keep both of you safe." He kissed me then, gentle and questioning, and I kissed him back. Not because I had to. Not because I was trapped or owned or forced. But because somewhere in the past 3 months, I'd stopped seeing only the monster and started seeing the man. Complicated, dangerous, deeply flawed, but capable of love so fierce it took my breath away. When we pulled apart, He rested his forehead against mine. We'll do this right. A proper wedding, whatever you want. And Emma will be there, our whole family together. Nothing too big, I warned. Nothing ostentatious. Whatever you want, he repeated. As long as at the end of it, you're my wife, and Emma is legally mine. Everything else is negotiable. We stood there in the soft glow of Emma's nightlight, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace, I wasn't sure I'd ever have that in Dominic's world, but acceptance, understanding, the recognition that sometimes the right choice wasn't the safe one. Sometimes it was the dangerous choice that offered the best chance at happiness. Emma stirred in her sleep, and we both froze, watching as she rolled over, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. Her small voice drifted up, still half asleep. Mama? Daddy? We're here, baby, I said softly. Both of you? Dominic. And I exchanged a look, something unspoken passing between us. Then he answered, his voice warm with love and promise. Yes, sweetheart, both of us. Always. Emma smiled in her sleep and settled back into dreams, content in a way I'd never seen her before. And I realized that despite everything, the danger, the fear, the impossible situation, we'd somehow become what I'd always wanted for her. A family. The wedding was small, intimate, held in the garden of Dominic's villa outside the city. Just family and close friends, or what passed for family in Dominic's world. Emma was the flower girl, wearing a white dress that made her look like a princess, scattering rose petals with serious concentration. When Dominic and I exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish in good times and bad, I meant every word. Not because I was naive about what I was getting into, but because I'd learned something important over the past months. Love wasn't always safe. Sometimes it was dangerous, complicated, messy. Sometimes it meant accepting darkness alongside light, protecting fiercely while trying to remain kind, choosing danger because it came packaged with the family you desperately wanted. As Dominic slid the ring onto my finger, a platinum band with diamonds that probably cost more than most people's houses, Emma squealed with delight from where she stood beside us. You're married now. You're really married. We are, Dominic confirmed, lifting her into his arms. Which means you're officially Emma Rose Castellano. My daughter in every way that matters. Emma threw her arms around both our necks, pulling us into a three-way hug that made the small gathering of guests smile. And in that moment, despite everything that had led us here, I was happy. Later that night, after the celebration had ended, and Emma had fallen asleep in her new room in Dominic's villa, our villa now he and I, stood on the balcony overlooking the city. No regrets? He asked, his arm around my waist, pulling me close. Ask me in another 6 months, I said, but I was smiling. He turned me to face him, his expression serious. I know this isn't a fairy tale, Lena. I know there will be hard days, dangerous days, days when you wonder if you made the right choice. But I promise you this, I will love you and Emma with everything I have. I will protect you both with my life. And I will do everything in my power to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. I know. And I did. Whatever else Dominic was, whatever darkness existed in his world, his love for us was absolute, unquestionable. The kind of love that would burn the world down to keep us safe. There's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice dropping lower. Something I should have said before we married, but I was afraid it would change your answer. My stomach tightened with apprehension. What? I'm getting out. At my confused expression, he continued. Not immediately, not all at once, but I'm transitioning the family business to legitimate operations. It'll take years, maybe a decade, but I'm doing it. For Emma, for you, for the life I want us to have. I stared at him, searching his face for lies or manipulation. But I found only sincerity, determination, and something that looked like hope. You'd do that? Give up your empire? I'd do anything for my family. He cupped my face in his hands, the same way he had that night in his office when everything changed. You were right, Lena. Emma shouldn't grow up thinking violence is normal. She shouldn't have to be afraid. So I'm going to build something different, something clean, something I can be proud to pass on to her. That's going to make you vulnerable, I said quietly. Your rivals will see it as weakness. His smile was cold, dangerous, the Mafia boss showing through the devoted husband. Let them try. I'll handle the transition carefully, ruthlessly. And anyone who mistakes my love for my family as weakness will learn exactly how wrong they are. I should have been disturbed by the darkness in his voice. Instead, I felt safe, protected. Because this was who Dominic was, a man willing to change his entire world for the people he loved, but still dangerous enough to defend that world against all threats. I love you, I said, surprising myself with the declaration. I hadn't said those words in 6 years, hadn't allowed myself to feel them, but they were true. Somehow, impossibly, I'd fallen in love with Dominic Castellano again. Or maybe I'd never stopped. His expression transformed, softening with wonder. Say it again. I love you. This time it came easier. I love you, Dominic. Despite everything. Because of everything. I love you. He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I kissed him back with equal fervor. Because this was my choice. My family. My dangerous, complicated, fiercely protective family. From inside the house I heard Emma call out in her sleep. Mama? Daddy? We pulled apart, sharing a smile, and went to check on our daughter together. Emma had settled back into dreams by the time we reached her room, but we stood in the doorway anyway, watching her sleep, both of us marveling at the miracle she represented. She asked me something yesterday, Dominic said quietly. She wanted to know if we were going to have more babies, if she'd get a little brother or sister. I looked up at him, saw the question in his eyes. We hadn't discussed more children, hadn't talked about expanding our family beyond the 3 of us. Would you want that? I asked. More children? With you? His arm tightened around my waist. I'd want everything, Lena. A house full of children. Chaos and laughter and love. Everything I never had growing up. Everything I want to give Emma. He paused. But only if you want it too. I thought about it, imagined more children, more love, more of the family I'd always dreamed of. And I realized that yes, despite everything, I did want that. Wanted to build something beautiful with this dangerous man. Wanted to create a life that proved love could exist even in darkness. Maybe, I said, smiling up at him. Ask me again in a year. I will. He kissed the top of my head, his voice warm with promise. I'll ask you every year until you say yes. And then I'll give you everything you want, Lena. Everything. We stood there in the doorway of our daughter's room, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 6 years. Not just safety, not just security, but genuine, deep-down happiness. The kind that came from being exactly where you were supposed to be, with exactly who you were supposed to be with. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe. But it was ours, and that was enough. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.